6 months later, Maya Elizabeth Thornton stood in front of the courthouse steps, wearing a new blue dress that Sarah had helped her pick out for the special day. The adoption papers had been signed, the judge had made it official, and she was no longer a foster child bouncing from home to home. She was a daughter, permanently and legally part of the family that had chosen her just as much as she had chosen them. The transformation in Maya over those months had been remarkable, though it hadn't happened overnight. There had been setbacks and challenges, moments when her old fears surfaced, and she tested the boundaries of Jack and Sarah's patience. But each time she expected to be given up on, the Thorntons had proven their commitment to her all over again. The first major test had come just 3 weeks after the adoption decision was made. Maya had been having nightmares again, violent dreams about being abandoned that left her screaming and disoriented in the middle of the night. In previous foster homes, her sleep problems had been seen as disruptive and inconvenient. Some families had even requested her removal because they couldn't handle the midnight disturbances. But when Maya's nightmares returned at the ranch, Sarah had simply moved a comfortable chair into Maya's room so she could sit with her until the fear passed. Jack had installed a small nightlight that projected stars on the ceiling, something Maya could focus on when the panic felt overwhelming. They had found ways to help her feel safe without making her feel like a burden or a problem to be solved. The healing process had been gradual and sometimes frustrating. Maya had spent so many years protecting herself by not trusting anyone that learning to be vulnerable with the Thorntons required tremendous courage. There were days when she would retreat into old patterns, becoming withdrawn and suspicious, testing whether their love was conditional on her being easy to handle. One particularly difficult day had come when Maya learned that her birth mother had been arrested again, this time for drug possession. The news had triggered a confusing mix of emotions: anger at being abandoned, guilt for being happy in her new life, and a deep sadness for the woman who had given birth to her but had never been able to be a real mother. Maya had acted out that day, deliberately knocking over feed buckets in the barn and being rude to Sarah during dinner. She was trying to prove to herself that the Thorntons would eventually get fed up with her difficulties and send her away like everyone else had. It was a self-destructive pattern she had learned in other homes, pushing people away before they could reject her. Instead of punishing her or losing their temper, Jack and Sarah had simply acknowledged that she was having a hard day and given her space to work through her emotions. Later that evening, Sarah had knocked gently on Maya's door and asked if she wanted to talk about whatever was bothering her. "I heard about your birth mother," Sarah had said quietly. "I imagine that brings up a lot of complicated feelings." Maya had finally broken down and admitted her fears about not deserving a good life when her birth mother was struggling so much. Sarah had helped her understand that being happy and loved didn't take anything away from anyone else, and that she wasn't responsible for fixing or saving the adults who had failed her. The real breakthrough in Maya's healing had come through her work with the rescue animals on the ranch. Jack and Sarah had slowly given her more responsibility with the horses, cattle, and the various injured or abandoned animals that found their way to the Thornton property. Maya discovered that she had a natural gift for working with traumatized animals, perhaps because she understood what it felt like to be scared and defensive. There was a young Mustang named Spirit who had been rescued from a neglectful situation. The horse was skittish and aggressive, lashing out at anyone who tried to approach. The previous owners had wanted to have him put down because he was considered dangerous and untrainable. But Jack had seen potential in the angry young stallion and had brought him to the ranch to see if patience and proper care could help him heal. Maya had been drawn to Spirit from the moment she saw him. Something in his wild, frightened eyes reminded her of her own feelings when she had first arrived at the ranch. Against Jack's initial concerns, Maya had asked to be the one to work with the traumatized horse. "He's dangerous, sweetheart," Jack had warned. "He's been hurt badly, and he doesn't trust anyone. I don't want you to get injured." "But that's exactly why I should work with him," Maya had insisted. "I know what it feels like to be that scared. I know what it's like to want to hurt people before they can hurt you." Under Jack's careful supervision, Maya had begun the slow process of gaining Spirit's trust. She would sit outside his corral for hours, reading aloud or simply being present without making demands. She learned to read his body language, to approach when he was calm, and give him space when he was agitated. Gradually, the angry horse began to accept her presence. The first time Spirit allowed Maya to touch his neck was a moment of triumph that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. The girl who had been so afraid to trust had somehow found the courage to reach out to another wounded soul, and, in doing so, she was healing her own heart. As the months passed, both Maya and Spirit made remarkable progress. The horse learned to trust humans again, while Maya learned that love didn't have to be earned through perfect behavior. She discovered that real families stayed together through difficulties, that making mistakes didn't equal being rejected, and that having a bad day didn't mean being a bad person. The transformation showed in small but significant ways. Maya began sleeping through the night more often. She started talking about future plans, something she had never been able to do when her life was uncertain. She made friends at her new school and began participating in activities like the 4-H club, where her skills with animals made her popular with her peers. Perhaps most importantly, Maya learned to call Jack and Sarah Dad and Mom without feeling like she was betraying her birth parents or pretending to be something she wasn't. The words came naturally after months of experiencing what real parental love felt like, and they represented a healing that went deeper than legal paperwork. The day of the final adoption hearing, Maya had been nervous about seeing Mrs. Patterson and the judge again. Courtrooms reminded her of the many times she had been shuffled between families, and she was afraid something might go wrong at the last minute. But when the judge asked if she understood what adoption meant and whether she wanted the Thorntons to be her permanent family, Maya had answered with clear conviction. "Yes, Your Honor. They're not just adopting me. I'm choosing them too. We're choosing to be a family together." After the courthouse ceremony, the new family had celebrated with dinner at Maya's favorite restaurant, followed by a visit to the ranch to share the news with the animals. Maya had run straight to Spirit's corral, eager to tell him that she finally had what he had found, a permanent home where she was wanted and loved. "We did it, Spirit," she whispered as the horse nuzzled her shoulder. "We both found our families." That evening, as the Thorntons sat on their front porch watching the sunset, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 2 years earlier, she had been a frightened, angry child who believed that being left behind was her natural fate. Now she was a confident young girl who understood that her worth wasn't determined by the people who had abandoned her, but by the people who had chosen to love her. "Mom," Maya said, still savoring the word that had once felt so dangerous to say. "Do you think other kids like me will come to live here?" Sarah smiled and pulled Maya closer on the porch swing. "Would you like that?" "Yes," Maya said without hesitation. "I want to help other kids learn what I learned. I want them to know that being left behind doesn't mean they're not worthy of a real family." Jack nodded approvingly. "I think you would be wonderful at helping other children heal. You understand things that most people don't." Maya looked out at the ranch that was now truly her home, at the animals who had taught her about trust and healing, at the parents who had shown her what unconditional love looked like. She thought about the scared little girl who had stood at a gas station 2 years ago, clutching a plastic bag and believing she was unlovable. That little girl still lived inside her, but she was no longer the dominant voice in Maya's head. Now she was surrounded by stronger voices, the voice of parents who believed in her, the voice of her own growing confidence, and the voice of hope that had finally learned it was safe to speak. "I used to think being abandoned meant I was broken," Maya said thoughtfully. "But now I think maybe it just meant I was waiting for the right family to find me. Everything that happened before brought me here, and I wouldn't change that even if I could." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Maya Elizabeth Thornton sat surrounded by the family she had been waiting for all her life. She was no longer a child left behind. She was a daughter who had come home, and who was ready to help other lost children find their way home too. The ranch that had saved her would become her launching pad for saving others, and the love that had healed her would become the foundation for healing many more. Maya had learned the most important lesson of all, that being chosen by a family was wonderful, but choosing to be part of that family was the real magic that made it permanent. She was home, she was loved, and she was ready for whatever came next. 3 weeks had passed since Maya arrived at the Thornton Ranch, and she was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. In her experience, Foster families showed their true colors around the 3-week mark, when the novelty of having a new child wore off and the real work of dealing with a damaged kid began. But the Thorntons continued to surprise her with their steady patience and their apparent lack of hidden agendas. Every morning, Maya woke to the sound of Jack's boots on the front porch as he headed out to do the early feeding. She had started setting her alarm for 6:30 so she could watch him from her bedroom window. There was something comforting about his routine, the way he moved through his tasks with quiet efficiency, the way the animals gathered around him with obvious trust and affection. Sarah had established her own gentle routine with Maya. Every morning, she would knock softly on Maya's door and ask if she wanted breakfast. She never pushed when Maya said she preferred to eat alone, and she always left a plate warming in the oven so Maya could eat when she felt ready. It was a small kindness, but it meant everything to a child who had learned to eat quickly and quietly to avoid drawing attention to herself. The first real test of the Thorntons' patience came on a Tuesday morning when Maya accidentally knocked over a glass of orange juice at breakfast. The glass shattered on the kitchen floor, sending juice and shards of glass across the tile. Maya's immediate reaction was to freeze, her whole body tensing as she waited for the shouting to begin. In previous homes, breaking something had resulted in lectures about being careless, sometimes followed by punishment or having privileges taken away. Maya had learned to brace herself for anger, for voices raised in frustration, for the inevitable reminder that foster children needed to be grateful and careful with other people's things. Instead, Sarah simply reached for the paper towels and began cleaning up the mess. "Accidents happen," she said calmly. "No harm done. Why don't you grab the broom from the closet so we can get these glass pieces cleaned up?" Maya stared at her in disbelief. "You're not mad about an accident?" "Of course not. I've broken more glasses than I can count over the years. It's part of life." That afternoon, Maya found herself following Jack out to the pasture where he was checking fence posts. She had been doing this more often lately, drawn by his calm presence and his willingness to let her observe without feeling pressured to talk. Today, however, she had questions that had been building up inside her for weeks. "Mr. Thornton," she began hesitantly, "why did you and Mrs. Thornton want to foster kids?" "You don't have to." Jack paused in his work and leaned against a fence post, considering his answer carefully. Maya had learned to appreciate this about him. He never gave her quick, easy answers that sounded like something adults thought children wanted to hear. "Sarah and I weren't able to have children of our own," he said finally. "We tried for a lot of years, and it just wasn't meant to be. We could have been bitter about that, but instead we decided that maybe we were meant to help kids who needed a different kind of family. But why keep doing it for 20 years? Some of the kids must have been really difficult." Jack smiled at her directness. "Some of them were challenging, yes. But every single one of them taught us something important. And every single one of them deserved to have adults who were willing to stick with them, even when things got hard." Maya digested this information silently. She had never considered that foster parents might get something positive out of the experience beyond the monthly checks from the state. The idea that the Thorntons might actually value what children brought to their lives was foreign to her. What if a kid was really, really difficult, she pressed? What if they stole things or lied or broke important stuff on purpose? Jack looked at her thoughtfully, and Maya realized he understood that she wasn't asking hypothetically. "I guess we would try to figure out why they were doing those things. In our experience, kids don't act out just to be mean. They're usually trying to protect themselves or trying to get needs met that they don't know how to ask for directly." That evening, Maya made a decision that surprised even herself. When Sarah knocked on her door to ask about dinner, Maya opened the door fully instead of just cracking it. "Could I eat with you and Mr. Thornton tonight?" she asked quietly. Sarah's face lit up with genuine pleasure, but she kept her voice calm and matter-of-fact. "We would love that. Jack's been hoping you might join us soon. He's been saving up stories about the horses that he thinks you might enjoy." Dinner at the Thornton table was unlike any meal Maya had experienced in foster care. There was no pressure to make conversation, no awkward questions about her past, no forced attempts at creating instant family bonding. Instead, Jack told funny stories about the animals, Sarah asked Maya's opinion about what vegetables to plant in the garden, and they talked about everyday things like the weather and what movie might be good to watch later. Maya found herself relaxing in spite of her determination to stay guarded. The Thorntons had a way of including her in their conversation without putting her on the spot, and they seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and preferences. When she mentioned that she had never seen a garden being planted, Sarah immediately invited her to help with the spring planting the following weekend. "Only if you want to," Sarah added quickly. "No pressure. But gardens are pretty amazing things. You plant tiny seeds and take care of them, and they grow into something beautiful and useful." After dinner, Maya helped clear the table without being asked. It was a habit from previous foster homes, where children were expected to earn their keep through chores. But when she started loading the dishwasher, Jack gently stopped her. "That's kind of you, Maya. But you're not here to be our hired help," he said. "We all pitch in around here because we're a family, not because anyone has to earn their place." The word family hung in the air between them. Maya had heard foster parents use that word before, usually when they were trying to convince social workers that they were providing a stable home environment. But when Jack said it, it sounded different. It sounded like something that might actually be possible rather than just something adults said. The real turning point came the following Saturday morning. Maya had been helping Sarah plant tomato seedlings when she heard a car coming up the driveway. Her blood went cold when she recognized the familiar sedan that belonged to Mrs. Patterson, her social worker. Unexpected visits from social workers usually meant one of two things. Either there was a problem with her placement, or another family was interested in taking her. Maya's hands started shaking as she watched Mrs. Patterson get out of the car. She had just started to feel safe here, just started to believe that maybe the Thorntons were different. The thought of being moved again, of starting over in another strange house with another set of rules and expectations, made her feel sick to her stomach. "Maya," Sarah noticed her distress immediately. "What's wrong, honey?" "Mrs. Patterson is here," Maya whispered. "She's going to take me away, isn't she? Did I do something wrong? I can be better, I promise. I won't break anything else. And I'll do more chores. And I won't ask for anything." Sarah knelt down beside Maya and gently took her dirt-covered hands. "Oh, sweetheart, Mrs. Patterson is here for a routine visit. That's all. No one is taking you anywhere unless you want to go somewhere. But I heard you and Mr. Thornton talking about paperwork last night. And adults always send kids away when they get tired of dealing with them." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she kept her voice steady. "Maya, the paperwork Jack and I were discussing was about making your placement here permanent, if that's something you would want. We weren't talking about sending you away. We were talking about making this your real home." Maya stared at her in disbelief. In all her years in foster care, no family had ever expressed interest in adoption. She was too old, too damaged, too difficult. Families wanted babies or very young children who could adapt easily and who wouldn't come with complicated histories. "You would want to adopt me?" Maya asked in a whisper. "Even though I'm not a baby? Even though I have problems?" "Maya, everyone has problems. You're not broken, and you're not too difficult. You're just a little girl who has had to be strong for too long. Jack and I would be honored to be your parents, if that's what you want." Mrs. Patterson's visit confirmed what Sarah had said. The social worker was there to discuss the possibility of the Thorntons beginning the adoption process. Maya learned that Jack and Sarah had been asking about adoption since her second week at the ranch, but they had wanted to give her time to adjust before bringing up the possibility. "It would mean this would be your home permanently," Mrs. Patterson explained. "The Thorntons would be your legal parents, and you would be their daughter in every way that matters. But it's entirely up to you, Maya. No pressure." That afternoon, Maya found herself in the pasture with Thunder, trying to process everything that had happened. The old rodeo horse had become her confidant over the past few weeks, a patient listener who never judged or offered unwanted advice. She had told him things she had never told any human, secrets and fears and hopes that felt too dangerous to speak aloud. "They want to adopt me, Thunder," she whispered against his neck. "They want me to be their real daughter. But what if I'm not good enough? What if I disappoint them? What if they change their minds later?" The horse stood quietly, his presence solid and reassuring. Maya had learned from Jack that Thunder had been afraid to trust for a long time too. But eventually he had taken the risk because the alternative was staying scared and alone forever. That evening at dinner, Maya found her voice. Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, she began formally, her heart pounding so hard she was sure they could hear it. If you really want to adopt me, then I would like that very much. But I need you to know that I might mess up sometimes. I might have bad dreams or get scared or do stupid things. And if you ever change your minds, it will probably break my heart worse than it's ever been broken before. Jack reached across the table and gently took her hand. Maya, everyone messes up sometimes. Sarah and I mess up sometimes. Making mistakes doesn't make you unlovable or unwanted. And as for changing our minds, that's not going to happen. When we make a commitment to someone, we keep it. Always. Sarah nodded in agreement. You're not a trial run for us, sweetheart. You're not a foster child we're testing out. From the moment we asked for you to be placed with us, we were hoping this would be your forever home. We love you, Maya. Not because you're perfect, but because you're you. For the first time since her mother had abandoned her at the gas station 2 years earlier, Maya allowed herself to cry. Not the silent, hidden tears she had shed in other foster homes, but real, honest sobbing that came from a place deep inside her that had been frozen with fear and disappointment for so long. Sarah came around the table and gathered Maya into her arms, and for the first time in years, Maya didn't flinch or pull away. She let herself be held, let herself be comforted, let herself believe that maybe she really had found the family she had stopped hoping for. Jack joined the embrace, his strong arms encircling both of them, and Maya felt something she had never experienced before, the absolute certainty that she was safe, that she was wanted, and that she was home. The old pickup truck disappeared down the dusty road, leaving nothing but tire tracks and a cloud of brown dust hanging in the hot Texas air. 8-year-old Maya Martinez stood at the edge of the gas station parking lot, clutching a torn plastic bag that contained everything she owned in the world. Her mother's promise to come back after buying cigarettes had been made 3 hours ago, and the sun was already starting to sink toward the horizon. Maya had learned not to cry anymore. Crying didn't bring people back, and it only made the adults at the various shelters and foster homes look at her with that mixture of pity and annoyance that she had come to recognize. Instead, she sat down on the curb and carefully counted the 3 crumpled dollar bills her mother had pressed into her small hand before walking into the store and never coming out. The gas station clerk, a tired-looking woman named Rita, had been watching Maya through the window for the past hour. She had seen enough abandoned children in her 15 years working the night shift to know the signs. The way the little girl kept looking down the empty road, the way she held herself so still and quiet, the way she rationed the single candy bar she had bought with her precious money. Honey, you got somewhere to go tonight? Rita asked gently as she stepped outside during a lull in customers. Maya looked up with dark eyes that seemed too old for her face. My mama's coming back. She just went to get cigarettes. Rita knelt down beside the child, her heart breaking at the familiar lie that abandoned children told themselves. What's your name, sweetheart? Maya Elizabeth Martinez. The girl replied with the careful pronunciation of someone who had given their name to many officials and social workers. I'm 8 years old, and I don't have any family except my mama. The next morning, Maya found herself in the back seat of a social worker's car, heading toward yet another temporary placement. This was her 7th home in 2 years, and she had stopped hoping that any of them would want to keep her. The social worker, Mrs. Patterson, was a kind woman who had been trying to find Maya a permanent home, but the little girl's behavioral issues made her a difficult placement. Maya didn't speak much, didn't trust easily, and had a habit of hoarding food in her room. She would wake up screaming from nightmares about being left behind, and she never fully unpacked her belongings because she had learned that she would be moving again soon enough. Foster families wanted sweet, grateful children who would fit seamlessly into their lives, not damaged little girls who flinched when adults raised their voices and who tested every boundary to see when they would be rejected again. The car turned down a long dirt road lined with mesquite trees and fence posts. In the distance, Maya could see a large ranch house surrounded by barns and corrals. Horses grazed peacefully in green pastures, and the whole scene looked like something from a picture book. But Maya had learned not to be impressed by nice houses. Nice houses didn't necessarily mean nice people, and she had been disappointed too many times to get her hopes up. "This is the Thornton Ranch," Mrs. Patterson explained as they pulled up to the house. "Mr. and Mrs. Thornton have been fostering children for over 20 years. They specifically asked for you, Maya." Maya said nothing, but her grip tightened on her plastic bag. In her experience, when adults specifically asked for her, it usually meant they needed extra money from the state or they were looking for free labor. She had learned to be useful but invisible, to do chores without being asked, and to never expect anything in return. The front door of the ranch house opened, and a tall, weathered man in his 60s stepped out onto the porch. He wore faded jeans, work boots, and a shirt that had seen better days. His gray hair was thinning, and his face was deeply lined from years of working in the sun. But when he looked at Maya, his blue eyes were gentle and patient. Behind him came a woman with silver hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore jeans and a simple cotton shirt, and her hands were calloused from work. She didn't look like any of the foster mothers Maya had stayed with before. There was something solid and real about both of them, something that made Maya's guard go up even higher because she had learned that the worst disappointments came from the people who seemed the kindest at first. "You must be Maya," the man said, walking slowly toward the car. He didn't rush or make any sudden movements, and he kept his voice low and calm. "I'm Jack Thornton, and this is my wife, Sarah. We've been looking forward to meeting you." Maya climbed out of the car and stood stiffly beside Mrs. Patterson. She nodded politely, but didn't speak. She had learned that adults appreciated good manners, and being polite bought her time to figure out what these new people wanted from her. Sarah Thornton knelt down to Maya's eye level, something that immediately made the little girl nervous. Adults who try to get on her level usually wanted something, and they usually started with a lot of fake sweetness that would disappear the first time she made a mistake. "Maya, I know you've been through a lot," Sarah said quietly, "and I know you probably don't trust us yet. That's okay. Trust has to be earned, and we're willing to take as long as that needs. For now, would you like to see your room and maybe meet some of the animals?" Maya nodded again, still not speaking. She followed the Thorntons into the house, her eyes automatically cataloging escape routes and hiding places. The house was clean but lived in, with comfortable furniture that showed wear and family photos covering the walls. It smelled like coffee and something baking in the oven, smells that reminded Maya of the few good memories she had from early childhood. Her room was on the second floor, with windows that looked out over the pastures. It was simply furnished with a bed, a dresser, and a desk, but someone had put fresh flowers on the windowsill and had made sure there were extra blankets folded at the foot of the bed. Maya noticed that the door had a lock on the inside, something she had never seen in a foster home before. "The lock is yours," Jack explained, noticing where she was looking. "Your room is your space, and you decide who comes in and when. All we ask is that you keep the door unlocked at night so we can check on you if there's an emergency." Maya set her plastic bag on the bed and looked around the room suspiciously. It was too nice, too thoughtful. In her experience, when adults went out of their way to make things nice for her, they expected something big in return. She waited for them to tell her what chores she would be responsible for, what rules she would need to follow, what would happen if she didn't live up to their expectations. Instead, Sarah showed her where the bathroom was and explained that dinner would be ready in an hour. "You don't have to eat with us tonight if you're not comfortable," she said. "I can bring a plate up to your room if you prefer. Whatever feels right for you." Jack pointed out the window toward the barns. "We've got horses, cattle, chickens, and a few rescue dogs. If you're interested in meeting them, I'll be doing evening chores in about 30 minutes. You're welcome to come along, but only if you want to." After they left her alone, Maya sat on the edge of the bed and tried to figure out what was wrong with this picture. The Thorntons seemed almost too normal, too patient. They weren't pushing her to talk or trying to hug her or making her feel like she had to perform gratitude. They weren't asking her about her past or making promises about the future. They were just treating her like a person who deserved basic respect and space. Maya had been in enough homes to know that this kind of treatment usually meant one of two things. Either they were genuinely different from other foster families, or they were very good at hiding their true intentions. She had learned to hope for the first, but prepare for the second. As the sun began to set, Maya heard the sound of boots on the front porch, and the low murmur of Jack's voice talking to someone. Curious despite herself, she looked out her window and saw him walking toward the barn with a black and white border collie at his side. The dog moved with the easy confidence of an animal that was well-loved and well-treated, and Jack's body language suggested the same kind of patient competence he had shown with her. Maya had always loved animals more than people. Animals didn't lie or make promises they couldn't keep. They didn't pretend to care and then disappear when caring became inconvenient. If the Thorntons were good to their animals, maybe they really were different from the other families she had stayed with. Almost without realizing it, Maya found herself walking downstairs and out the front door. She followed the sound of Jack's voice toward the largest barn, moving quietly so she could observe without being noticed. She had learned that watching adults when they thought no one was looking was the best way to learn who they really were. Inside the barn, Jack was feeding a group of horses, talking to each one by name as he filled their feed buckets. His movements were efficient but gentle, and the horses clearly trusted him completely. They nickered softly when they saw him coming and stood calmly while he checked them over for any signs of injury or illness. "That's Thunder," Jack said without turning around, somehow knowing that Maya was watching from the doorway. "He's a retired rodeo horse. Came to us 3 years ago when his owner could no longer afford to keep him. He was pretty angry and scared when he first got here, didn't trust anyone. Took almost 6 months before he would let me touch him without trying to bite or kick." Maya stepped a little closer, intrigued despite her wariness. The horse Jack was talking about was a large bay gelding with intelligent eyes and scars on his legs that spoke of a hard life before he came to the ranch. What happened after 6 months? Maya found herself asking, the first word she had spoken since arriving at the ranch. Jack smiled, but didn't make a big deal about the fact that she had finally talked. He figured out that nobody here was going to hurt him or ask him to do anything he wasn't ready for. Now he's one of the gentlest horses we have. Sometimes the ones who have been hurt the worst turn out to be the most loving, once they learn it's safe. Maya understood that Jack wasn't just talking about the horse, but she appreciated that he wasn't being obvious about it. She had heard plenty of lectures from well-meaning adults about healing and trust and moving forward. This was different. This was just information, offered without expectations or demands for response. "Can I pet him?" Maya asked quietly. Jack nodded and showed her how to approach Thunder safely, how to let him smell her hand first, how to stroke his neck gently. The horse stood perfectly still, seeming to sense that this small human needed the same kind of patience that had been shown to him. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Maya felt a moment of peace. Standing in the warm barn with her hand on Thunder's soft neck, listening to Jack's quiet voice explaining how to read a horse's body language, she almost let herself believe that maybe this place really could be different. But as the evening chores continued and Sarah called them in for dinner, Maya reminded herself not to get too comfortable. She had learned the hard way that the moment you started to believe in something good was the moment it was most likely to be taken away. The Thorntons seemed kind, but Maya had met kind people before who had broken her heart when their kindness ran out. Still, as she followed Jack back toward the house, she found herself looking forward to learning more about the horses. If nothing else, maybe she could enjoy the animals while she was here, however long that turned out to be. And maybe, just maybe, she could let herself hope that this time might be different, even if hope was the most dangerous thing a child like her could carry.